Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to the beginner's guide. Let's continue.
This one took a
Hmm.
lot longer than all the others for Coda to make. It was 4 months between this and the last one. That's twice as long as it took him to make any other game before this, and it's not like it's particularly complex, so I remember I found that a little strange at the time.
4 months to make a game is really nothing. Um, Games usually take 3 to 8 years to make if you're going to make a good AAA game, and making even a good indie game is not going to really limit the amount of time more there. Again, now we're starting to see the same furniture again, so it almost seems like you could escape this room, but there's no floor lamp. Um, yeah. If anything, the thing that Coda could have learned more than anything would have been to take more time, have an actual idea and a concept of a game, have it be incredibly ambitious and incredibly smart, and be a single thing that you would just work on for years and years until you either got good enough at making games or gave up on it. The fact that he makes these small little, at best you'd call them vertical slices, which even in that case that phrase is probably wrong. A vertical slice is supposed to be a very rough cut of what a game is. So you would go to a publisher as a developer and say, this is a vertical slice for a proposed game. Here's, in the vertical slice, you would have the character doing most of the actions they would do throughout the game, and in some of the set pieces and locations. It would try to give you a little bit of everything, in the same way that if you were cutting a multi-layered cake in a vertical slice, you would get a little bit of the icing on top, you'd get some of the first layer of cake, you'd get some of the cream filling, you'd get some of the second layer, you get some more filling, you get the third layer, and then you get the icing on the edge. That's what a vertical slice in the game is supposed to be. And that's somewhat what this is, but that implies that there would be a finished product which would eventually be the whole cake, and he's not doing that. And even when he is making vertical slices, there's not really any middle filling, and there's really only one sheet cake, and maybe there's a little bit of icing, but it's not particularly fancy. Um, like, if this was his concept of a game, just this picture, if you could have a single game where you're running around just a small street block, looking up and seeing these buildings, and you spent 3 years making a game that worked out, that looked that way and worked that way, that'd be great. But that's not what he does with his time. He just asset flips, or let's just assume none of it's asset flipped. Let's just assume that he 3D modeled each of these things in Source and then hand placed them in the Source engine, almost certainly not by hand coding anything. That's still not really something that would have taken 4 months to do. Um, this feels like a section of the Stanley Parable. At a certain point, part of the concept of kill your babies, um, or a parallel concept to the idea of killing your babies, in the sense of if you have a creative idea and it's not working, just giving up on it, is the concept of giving up early. Get in and out as soon as it gets too hard and you can't figure out a solution. Give up. Maybe you'll sleep on it, maybe you'll think of a solution, maybe you'll think of a better project and move on. And at a certain level, I guess these were given up ideas because they weren't effectively tried to be sold or published anywhere, I don't think. But I don't feel like uh, there was a good implementation of giving up, because he certainly didn't give up on the idea of just using the same layout in the same rooms over and over again, which that happens in the Stanley Parable quite a bit. And the parallels here really do imply that the Stanley Parable creator is Coda, and Coda may be the writer of the Stanley Parable. This feels very different also from something that Coda would do, because Coda has been described as being utterly alone and wanting to not be alone, but being pretty much incapable of really doing the things necessary to not be alone. Being on a stage in front of everybody else is just like the antithesis of what I think Coda would like or enjoy or want to do. Can't climb up here. It almost can't interact with any of these switches. It almost feels like, if anything, this might be a representation of announcing Coda announcing the Stanley Parable on some stage and it just freaking him out completely. Here's clipping not turned on this object, which is interesting. Let's go back. Clipping is turned on all of these. Yeah. And maybe not for the source engine at this time, but clipping and having physics turned on so you can't walk into an object and it stops you, or in this case having physics turned off so you walk into an object and you're not pushing it and it's not rolling. In most cases that's just a checkbox. So you either he either made a mistake or intentionally turned off clipping here so you can walk through all of these chests. You can walk through all of these, which probably that could be a copy paste error if he messed up once and then just started copying and pasting it over and over again. But then clipping over here is back on, which might indicate that there's a wall back behind this that you can walk into. But the wall still seems to have collisions. Even the little bar here has collisions, which arguably you should have clipping turned off on the bar so you could smoothly strafe alongside everything. The bars here also have collisions. Here's an example of also the engine probably by default just raising you up when you walk on this bar, which is probably how that first game messed up. And again, maybe you would just turn clipping off on that and assume that the player is walking over the bar instead of having a jarring head bob action. I haven't been pressing A to see if I could climb up here. This is more of an opera house or theater or playhouse. Alright, the performance is beginning, places. So we are at a gathering of professionals. First you start off by leaning against this wall. Okay. Good, stay right there. The woman across the room in this chair is a professional photographer of animals. It is your dream to photograph animals professionally. This is your one chance to learn something from her, to gain something, to succeed. Go on, say something to her. Hello. Sorry, I have to leave. Where's the bathroom? Let's go with hello. Hello, that's it. Wise, happy, focused, successful. That's not a conversation. You need to actually converse with her. Be a human being. Do it again. Yeah. Inherently, yeah, this is social anxiety, which, yeah, that's not surprising. Look at the glittering here. That almost looks like blood, but I imagine it might be just flashing of the lights as an effect. Yeah, almost certainly Coda would hate an experience like this. I'm super scared right now. I like you. Here are all my hopes and dreams. Let's go with here are all my hopes and dreams. No, that's not what I said to her at all. You're completely missing the tone of the conversation. I was reserved, but I knew what I wanted. I was confident. For some reason, it was just that one moment, but I was confident. Maybe you need a better feel of the setting. There are a lot of people around us. I'll give you some props to work with. These come that bounce when you touch them will represent the people nearby. Now talk to her again. So we have cones that bounce when you touch them. Seems like you get a couple of notes. This definitely feels like a nightmare to Coda, and nightmare to most people, frankly. This is kind of a great example, though, also of the way Coda is depicted is that he's got major misunderstanding of what human beings even are. The idea of cones that bounce when you touch them is an equatable or an equal trade for a human is ridiculous. And even the narrator seems to be merging himself into Coda and losing the separation of the claim that Coda is a different person. But even up until this point, this has always been what Coda thought of when he thought of people. Just a mannequin with different skin palette tones and a head that's a box that says elements. I wonder what the top of the head says. I don't think we can get high enough to see. Let's see, you must have worked really hard to get where you are is a good question to ask. But I think what we're getting back to is also gray options are just the wrong options. So nothing I pick is probably right. The other options, I bet you learned to lean into the pain. What are some sacrifices you had to make? What are some sacrifices you had to make is a decent question if you were doing an interview podcast or something, or a single night in the theater interviewing someone famous. It's not really a great question in a casual conversation so much. You're messing it all up again. You'll freak her out if the conversation gets that personal that quickly. Do you not realize how important this was for me? I'll never get another opportunity like this again. Everything. I want to try something. Try stepping back from the stage. I guess in this case we aren't getting the narrator actually speaking. We're getting Coda talking to us through the text of the game. And I'm confusing the two. Yeah. But the idea that Coda wanted to photograph animals seems kind of crazy, considering all he does is make these video games. And it does just also scream weird. But if you were not fully there, if you had diminished mental capacity, maybe you would have an odd obsession around photographing animals. Although that being said, if you wanted to take photographs of animals, you could probably do it fairly easily if you limit your requirements down to simply going to a shelter, taking photographs of animals and putting it on their website as far as animals to be adopted. Unless you just act so crazy that they won't even put up with you. Because I'm sure animal shelters are almost 100% run by volunteers, and they would love for someone of diminished mental capacity to help them out. So it's kind of an achievable goal. Now, if you want to go to the Sahara and photograph lions, that's going to require probably having a college degree in photography and a lot of good connections. I wonder if I'm supposed to walk backwards or if I'm just supposed to run in that direction. Here we're imprisoned again. Which, who cares? It's a video game. Feels like there's a level of...
The game ends with this eerie premonition of what's going to happen next in Coda's life. The solution to social anxiety, to fears of having to perform and having to chase success.
Wonderful. That's really wonderful.
The answer for Coda is to withdraw, to hide himself away. Which is what leads to scenarios like the stairs that slowed you down several games ago, where it just becomes harder and harder to access Coda's inner landscape because he keeps retreating. He just keeps backing away from possible connections to anyone other than himself. And to be honest, I didn't consider it very healthy when I first played this. You know, it looked to me like he was trying to justify the idea of just disconnecting yourself from the world. And that wasn't what I wanted for him or for his games. Because I feel like a lot of his games are inviting me to connect with this person, to bring him closer.
No, he's
but what can
ending the game.
After this, Coda went off and took another 5 months to make a new game.
Malibu trip. To play the game properly, you must keep your eyes closed. Please click to begin the game. I think the narrator has this wrong completely. I think Coda may be sending the message that he wants to cut himself off, but then why does he keep making the games and showing it to other people? The real world version of somebody like Coda would make all of these games and hide them away on a hard drive and never mention to anybody that was making them or show them to anybody. So if there really is a Coda, it would make more logical sense for the narrator to say, I found all these games in my cousin's computer, and I barely knew my cousin and I wanted to know him better, so I started playing these games. So, what's going on? Captain, what do we do? Help, I'm blind, I can't see anything. What's going on? Someone in the armor has just appeared. And then my vision suddenly went black. There's a giant door, and then it went black. I'm blind. So obviously I'm not blinded here. What's going on?
You should probably open your eyes if you haven't already. It's pretty much impossible to solve otherwise. And there is a solution, by the way.
Here's the 3 holes again. Truth. Didn't get there fast enough. They can go help, I'm blind. The only way to stop it is to speak something that is honest. I'm bursting with creative energy. I can't keep making these. My work is always fun. I can't keep making these. Yes, that's it. That's the truth. Can I not go in this elevator?
Like I said, I was getting concerned. First off, he's never been this explicit in his work about exactly what he's thinking. So where's that coming from? But then even weirder, his work has potentially stopped being an outlet for him. Not like he's having trouble iterating on ideas, but he literally just can't think of new ideas anymore. And in person, he was being a lot more distant than usual. Like, you know how sometimes a person will just deflect anything that you say in order to keep themselves disconnected all the time? It was that kind of thing. Here was the point in my relationship with Coda where I really started to wonder if he needed my help in some way.
They don't have anything on the top of their heads, it looks like, that you can read. Can we go back down? No. It almost certainly feels like this is the SS Whisper. The first game had the Whisper drive. It definitely feels like the narrator wants to be the savior of Coda, when really there's just not anyone other than a qualified professional psychologist that's gonna save somebody like Coda, and even at that, odds aren't 100%. I don't feel it anymore. I'm out of ideas. It's draining me. Yeah, I think it's draining him, really. It's him putting his energy in the wrong things that aren't succeeding and that aren't really helping him. Because if it was going to help him to make these games, it would have helped him by now. And him desperately trying to think of new ideas is not a good idea either. Like, because either ideas come to you or you don't. And nothing he's made really feel that creative. He's channeling very basic, normal feelings and trying to turn that into art when you need a more complex story. So I'm gonna go with it's draining me. Keep going, keep talking. I haven't been honest. I can't figure out how to say the thing. I thought that it was going to be easy. I guess if we're speaking as Coda, I think he thought game programming was going to be easy. Just as much as it is being asset flipped, and as much as he is not critical on his final products at all, and doesn't seem to really care about the final product. It seems to be good enough to just get a completion mark versus getting an A versus a B versus a C or D in a letter grading scenario for him. You're doing it. It's working. I'm alone. I'm stuck in it. I have to work harder. Yeah, I don't want to really crush people's dreams, but at a certain point, I feel like Coda needed to work harder. Of course, I also think Coda in the story is going to end up just killing himself. Him admitting he's alone doesn't really solve being alone, so that's not very helpful. I'm stuck in it is probably the most accurate description, though. Like, it's my own personal desire to have Coda say, I need to work harder. Because there could be a good game programmer here at some point. Although it may be too little too late. If you've spent many, many years making garbage games, the temptation to lean on making more garbage games will be too high. And if I was a game director producer, I probably would not hire Coda and instead hire someone with very little skill fresh out of high school or college, because at least then I have something that I can mold from new clay versus dried up old clay that's in the form of a poop emoji, I guess is what the example would be. But yeah, mentally, I think the right answer is he's stuck in it. We're going to be okay.
His games are going to get more desperate from here on out. After this game, it's almost 6 months before he finishes something new.
Yeah, and I feel like 6 months is probably the minimum you should take to release any game. And inherently, on some of those websites, forums where people were putting out very cheap, low effort Java games, I think it did become this rat race for a lot of people to put out new games once a week, new games every couple of weeks, every couple of months, to build up their own clout and be a part of this weird community. But the Java games in those communities, those websites, were creating their own community that was distinctly different from what the actual game development community would have been during this time. Alright, well, I'm going to end it a little early here today so we can start on Chapter 14 Island, which I'm a little surprised we've even gone that far. After that last game, if he had just stopped making games, that might have been a fairly decent swan song to say, alright, I made a bunch of these games, none of them worked, I need to give up on it, do something different, or at the very least take 6 months to make a better game. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.